Monica lived in a small, crowded apartment on the edge of the city. The kind of place where the walls had cracks, the paint was fading, and the air often smelled faintly of dampness. She had been a single mom for almost 5 years now, raising her daughter Lila entirely on her own. Life had not been easy. Every day felt like a struggle, a test of her patience and strength. But Monica loved Lila more than anything in the world, and that love gave her a reason to keep going, even when it seemed impossible. Each morning Monica would wake before dawn. The apartment was silent except for the faint sound of the city waking up outside her window. She would tiptoe past Lila's room, careful not to wake her, and start her day. First came the chores, washing dishes, sweeping the floor, and getting a simple breakfast ready. Most days it was just toast or oatmeal, but Monica made it cheerful, trying to put a smile on Lila's face before the day even started. After breakfast, Monica would rush to her first job. She worked at a small diner downtown, standing on her feet for hours, taking orders, serving food, and cleaning tables. The work was exhausting, but it paid the bills, or at least part of them. Then she would head to her second job at a local laundry service, where she spent her day folding clothes, ironing shirts, and making sure everything was perfectly neat. By the time she got home, her body ached, her back hurt, and her energy was nearly gone. Still, she would sit on the small couch and listen to Lila talk about her day at school, her eyes bright with innocence and curiosity. That was Monica's reward. The moments when Lila laughed or shared a story about her friends or proudly showed her a drawing she made. Despite working so hard, money was always tight. Rent was high, bills kept piling up, and the small savings Monica tried to keep vanished quickly. Some months she had to make choices that no parent should have to make. Should she skip buying a new pair of shoes for herself to make sure Lila had her school supplies? Should she cook smaller meals so there would be enough for the rest of the month? Every decision was heavy with responsibility, but Monica never let Lila see the stress she carried. She smiled, laughed, and reassured her daughter that everything would be okay, even when she wasn't sure herself. One particularly cold morning, Monica and Lila were on their way to pick up some groceries. The little money they had left was barely enough for the basics: bread, milk, some vegetables, and a few other essentials. Lila held Monica's hand tightly as they walked down the crowded streets, her little backpack bouncing against her back. She was curious and chatty, asking questions about everything she saw. Monica answered patiently, even though her mind was partly on the shopping list and partly on the bills waiting at home. At the same time, in a nearby shopping center, James was starting his shift. James was a janitor, a kind-hearted man in his late 50s. He had been working at the shopping center for over 20 years, sweeping floors, emptying trash, and making sure everything looked clean and presentable. James didn't have a lot of money. He lived in a modest apartment, paid his bills on time, and had just enough to get by. Most people passed him without noticing, seeing only the uniform he wore or the broom he carried. But James had a heart that cared deeply for others. He had a quiet way of observing the world, noticing small moments where he could make a difference, even in ways that didn't bring him recognition or reward. That morning, James was sweeping near the entrance when he noticed Monica and Lila. They looked tired, their clothes simple but neat. Lila's small shoes were worn at the edges, and Monica's coat had patches where the fabric had thinned from years of use. James felt a small pang in his heart. He could tell they were struggling, and he understood that look, the one of trying to stay strong when life was weighing heavily on you. Monica and Lila went inside the store, and James followed at a distance, continuing his work. He watched quietly as Monica put items on the counter. Lila reached for a small toy, a colorful little doll that she had been eyeing. Monica smiled gently, whispering that they would have to save for it, that it wasn't a priority. Lila's shoulders slumped, but she nodded obediently. Monica handed the cashier the money she had, counting carefully, hoping it would be enough. But when the cashier rang up the items, a small frown appeared on her face. Monica's heart sank. She was $5 short. $5. It wasn't much in the world's eyes, but for Monica, it was a mountain. She looked at Lila, whose eyes were wide and anxious. "I'm sorry, baby," Monica whispered. Lila didn't respond, but looked down at her feet, trying to hide the disappointment. Monica tried to explain to the cashier that she would come back for the missing amount, but the cashier shook her head, apologetic but firm. That's when James stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said gently. Monica looked up, surprised. The janitor stood there with a small smile, holding a folded bill in his hand. "Here," he said. "Take this. It will cover what you're short. You need it more than I do." Monica's eyes widened in disbelief. She tried to refuse. "No, I couldn't," she started, her voice shaking. James shook his head. "I insist. Consider it a gift. Just take it." His voice was calm, sincere. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't want to be thanked. He simply wanted to help. Lila, sensing the seriousness of the moment, looked up at James and smiled shyly. She reached out and hugged him around the waist, her little arms barely reaching. "Thank you," she whispered. James patted her gently on the head, smiling softly. Monica's throat tightened. Tears formed in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She took the bill, feeling the weight of the kindness she had never expected. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost a tremble. "Thank you so much." James nodded and returned to his duties. He didn't linger. The work of cleaning floors and emptying trash seemed mundane, but he carried a quiet satisfaction in his chest. He had no idea how much of a difference this small act would make, but he knew that he had done something meaningful. Monica and Lila walked out of the store, clutching their groceries. Monica looked down at Lila and saw her eyes shining, a small spark of joy returning. "You see, baby," she said softly, "there are good people in the world, people who care even when they have very little themselves." As they walked home, Monica thought about the man who had given them the last $50. She thought about how he had not asked for anything, how he had given freely. It made her heart ache with gratitude, and it made her think about the kind of person she wanted to be for Lila, to show kindness, even in small ways, and to never take life for granted. Lila skipped beside her, holding her mother's hand. "Mom," she said, looking up, "do you think he has a daughter too?" Monica smiled softly. "Maybe he does. Or maybe he's just someone who wants to help children he doesn't even know. People like that exist, sweetie. People who see someone in need and give what they can, even if it's all they have." For the first time in a long time, Monica felt a sense of hope, not just for the groceries or the bills that would be easier to pay now, but hope for the goodness in people, hope that the world was not as harsh as it sometimes felt. She looked at Lila's bright eyes and felt a renewed determination to keep going, to keep working hard, and to make a life that was full of love and gratitude, no matter how difficult things got. And somewhere in the background, James continued sweeping the floors, unaware that this small gesture of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would soon change lives. Not just for Monica and Lila, but for him too. He didn't know it yet, but the bond created in that brief moment would leave an imprint on all of them forever, showing that even the smallest acts of generosity can have the largest impact. Monica held Lila's hand tightly as they reached home, their hearts a little lighter, their steps a little quicker. It was more than just a day with groceries. It was a day that reminded them that kindness exists in unexpected places, and that sometimes, even when life feels impossible, a single act of generosity can give you hope to keep moving forward. After that day at the store, Monica couldn't stop thinking about the janitor who had helped them. She didn't even know his name, but the kindness in his eyes stayed with her. Every time she thought about that moment, she felt a warmth inside, a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if someone had handed her hope when she had almost given up on it. Lila, too, seemed to sense that something special had happened. She talked about the kind man who had given them money as if he were a hero from a storybook. That evening, when they returned to their small apartment, Monica carefully put away the groceries. She looked at Lila, who was quietly drawing at the small table by the window. "You know, Lila," Monica said softly, "there are people in the world who do kind things without asking for anything in return. People who see someone struggling and help even if it's all they have." Lila looked up, her eyes wide. "Like the man at the store?" she asked. "Yes, exactly like him," Monica said, smiling. She felt a mixture of gratitude and determination. That day had reminded her that even when life seemed unfair, there was still good in the world, and she wanted Lila to grow up understanding that. The next few days were busy. Monica returned to her routine of working long hours at the diner and the laundry service. Money James had given her helped cover some overdue bills, and for the first time in months she didn't have to worry about which bill to pay first or how she would make the rent. It was a relief that allowed her to breathe a little easier, even if only for a while. At the diner, Monica found herself thinking about James during quiet moments. She remembered the gentle way he had spoken, the calm in his eyes and the quiet strength in his actions. It made her wonder about his life, what challenges he faced and how someone could be so generous despite likely having very little themselves. She realized that acts of kindness didn't always come from people who were rich or powerful. Sometimes the people who had the least to give gave the most. Lila, meanwhile, carried a small spark of happiness with her. At school, she talked about the man who had helped them, describing him to her friends as if he were a superhero. "He didn't wear a cape," she said proudly, "but he had a big heart and he helped my mom and me when we needed it." Her teachers noticed a difference too. Lila seemed more confident, more joyful, and more willing to help others in her own little ways. It was remarkable how a single moment of kindness could ripple outward, influencing even the smallest actions. Monica, inspired by James's generosity, began to look for small ways she could give back. She didn't have much, but she realized that giving didn't always mean money. Sometimes it was just a smile, a listening ear, or offering help where it was needed. She helped an elderly neighbor carry groceries, offered her time to volunteer at the local community center, and even started cooking extra meals to share with those in need. Lila joined her whenever she could, and together, they learned that even small acts of kindness could make a big difference. One rainy afternoon, Monica was leaving work at the diner when she saw James outside the shopping center. He was mopping the wet floor near the entrance, his jacket soaked from the rain. He looked tired, older than his years, but there was a quiet dignity in the way he worked. Monica felt a sudden urge to approach him, to say thank you again, even though she knew he wouldn't want it. She walked up slowly. "Excuse me," she said, her voice slightly nervous. James looked up, surprised but smiling. "I didn't expect to see you again," he said warmly. I wanted to say thank you again," Monica said, "for helping us that day. I don't even know your name, but I'll never forget what you did for me and Lila." James shook his head gently. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I just did what I thought was right. Sometimes that's all anyone can do, help when you see someone in need." Monica smiled, feeling the depth of his humility. "I know, but it still meant the world to us," she said. "You gave us hope when we needed it most." James nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Hope is powerful," he said quietly. "Sometimes it's more valuable than money. It keeps people going when things get hard." Monica felt a lump in her throat. She realized that James wasn't just a janitor or a stranger who helped her that day. He was a man who carried kindness in his heart, a man who understood struggle and chose to make the world a little brighter, even in his own small way. She felt inspired, humbled, and grateful all at once. After that brief conversation, Monica and Lila walked home in silence, each lost in thought. Lila held her mother's hand tightly, feeling the comfort and warmth of that connection. She looked up at Monica and whispered, "I want to be like him when I grow up." Monica smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Lila's face. "You will be," she said softly. "You already are." The days passed and life slowly began to feel a little lighter. Monica managed her work, bills, and responsibilities, but there was a new sense of purpose in her actions. She started keeping a small journal, writing down moments of gratitude and small acts of kindness she and Lila experienced. It became a ritual for them, a way to remember the good in the world and to focus on the positive even when life was challenging. James, meanwhile, continued his work at the shopping center. Most people didn't notice him, but some began to take note of his quiet dedication and the gentle way he treated everyone he met. A few regular shoppers smiled at him, nodded in recognition, or even paused to say hello. Though he never sought attention, the small gestures of acknowledgement reminded him that his efforts mattered, even if in ways that were invisible at first. One evening, as Monica and Lila sat together at their small kitchen table, Monica spoke softly to her daughter. "You know, baby, sometimes helping others doesn't just change their lives. It changes yours too." Lila looked up curiously. "How?" she asked. "Because when you give, even in a small way, it makes you feel stronger, kinder, and happier," Monica explained. "It reminds you that you have the power to make a difference. That's what the man at the store showed us." Lila nodded thoughtfully. "I want to help people too," she said. "You will, Lila," Monica said, smiling. "You already have a big heart." That night, as they prepared for bed, Monica felt a deep sense of peace. Life was still hard and there were challenges ahead, but the memory of James's kindness stayed with her. It reminded her that no matter how small or unseen our actions might seem, they could leave a lasting impact. And perhaps, just perhaps, they could inspire a ripple effect of goodness in the world. For James, the days continued in a quiet rhythm of work and simple routines. But inside he carried a secret joy, the knowledge that his small act of generosity had helped a mother and her daughter when they needed it most. It wasn't something he boasted about or sought recognition for. It was simply a quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you've done the right thing. Monica continued to share the story with friends and coworkers, careful to focus on the lesson rather than the money. It's not about the $50, she would say. It's about seeing someone in need and choosing to help even when it's hard for you too. People listened, inspired by her words and moved by the story. Some offered help to Monica and Lila in small ways, donating clothes, giving tips, or offering advice. Slowly, a small network of support began to form around them, born from one simple act of kindness. And in the quiet moments, when Monica and Lila sat together reading or talking, the two of them felt a bond that went beyond family. It was a connection to the world, a reminder that even in difficult times there were people who cared. They carried James's lesson in their hearts, learning that kindness didn't always have to be grand or expensive. Sometimes it was as simple as noticing someone's struggle and offering what you could, when you could. Lila began practicing her own acts of kindness, sharing her toys with friends, helping classmates at school, and offering a smile to anyone who looked sad. Monica watched with pride, realizing that the impact of that day at the store extended far beyond the groceries it had bought. It had planted seeds of empathy, generosity, and hope in both their lives. And though James continued his work quietly, mostly unnoticed by the world around him, he had unknowingly sparked a chain of events that would change the lives of Monica, Lila, and eventually his own. All it took was one moment, one decision, and one act of generosity to remind people that hope and kindness could exist, even in the most unexpected places. Life for Monica and Lila had begun to change, slowly but surely, in ways neither of them had expected. After that day in the store, Monica found herself looking at the world differently. The kindness of James, the janitor who had given them his last $50, had opened her heart in ways she hadn't realized she needed. It wasn't just about the money, it was about hope, trust, and the knowledge that good people still existed, even in hard times. That feeling stayed with her as she went about her day-to-day life, giving her strength when she felt tired or overwhelmed. Monica started noticing little opportunities to help others, even in her own small ways. She began with neighbors who were struggling too. There was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who lived down the hall and often struggled to carry her groceries. Monica made it a point to help her every few days, carrying heavy bags up the stairs and checking in on her well-being. Mrs. Thompson always thanked her, sometimes with a small chocolate bar or a warm smile, and Monica realized how much a simple act of help could mean to someone. At work, Monica began looking for ways to offer small kindnesses to her coworkers. At the diner, she would cover a shift for someone who had a family emergency. At the laundry service, she would stay a few extra minutes to help a colleague finish a pile of clothes. None of it earned her money or recognition, but it gave her a sense of fulfillment she had not felt in a long time. Every act, no matter how small, seemed to lift her spirits. Lila, of course, was watching her mother closely. The little girl had always been observant, but now she noticed things with a new clarity. She began doing her own small acts of kindness inspired by the story of James and what he had done for them. She would share her snacks with friends who didn't have any, help a classmate who had fallen during recess, and even offer her crayons to someone who had forgotten theirs. Monica noticed these moments and felt a deep sense of pride. She knew that kindness could grow like a seed, spreading quietly and naturally if nurtured. One afternoon, Monica decided to visit the local community center. She had heard that they were looking for volunteers to help. With after-school programs for children, she didn't have much time or energy, but she knew that offering even a few hours a week could make a difference. Lila came along, naturally curious and eager to participate. Together, they started helping with homework, organizing activities, and simply spending time with children who needed attention and care. The experience was rewarding in ways Monica hadn't anticipated. Seeing the children light up when she helped them with their reading or math reminded her of Lila's own excitement when she mastered something new. It also reminded her that kindness didn't need to be grand, it just needed to be genuine. The smallest gestures, like listening to someone or offering encouragement, could have a lasting impact. Meanwhile, James continued his work at the shopping center, mostly unnoticed. He still woke early every morning, took public transportation to work, and spent hours cleaning floors, emptying trash, and making sure the place looked presentable. Life for him remained modest, and he still had his own challenges, but there was a quiet satisfaction in his heart. He knew that helping Monica and Lila had changed their lives, even if he would never fully see the extent of it. That feeling gave him a sense of purpose and pride that he carried quietly, like a warm secret. One day, a local reporter visited the shopping center to do a story about everyday heroes. She asked staff if they knew of anyone who had made a difference in their community, and someone mentioned James. At first, he hesitated, unsure if he wanted attention. He was just a janitor, an ordinary man doing ordinary work, and he didn't feel like a hero. But the reporter insisted, wanting to capture the story of his quiet act of kindness. When the story aired, Monica and Lila were surprised to see James on television. They watched as the reporter described how he had given his last $50 to a struggling mother and her daughter, refusing anything in return. His modesty, humility, and generosity were highlighted, and the story resonated deeply with the community. People were inspired by his selflessness and moved by the impact of such a simple gesture. Monica felt tears in her eyes as she watched. The world seemed bigger, kinder, and more connected than she had imagined. She felt proud of James, proud of the man who had reminded her that compassion mattered more than money, status, or recognition, and she felt grateful, not just for the money he had given her, but for the lesson he had taught her and Lila. After the story aired, things began to shift. Community members reached out, offering small acts of help. Some donated clothes or food. Others offered part-time jobs or guidance to help Monica stabilize her finances. It wasn't a sudden miracle, but it was a ripple effect that brought real change into their lives. Monica felt a renewed sense of hope, realizing that the kindness of one person could inspire many others to give, to share, and to care. James, on the other hand, was overwhelmed by the attention. He had never sought recognition for his actions, and suddenly people were sending him messages, calling him a hero, and even offering donations. At first, he was hesitant, unsure if he deserved it. But over time, he realized that the attention didn't diminish the act, it amplified its purpose. By sharing his story, others were inspired to act, to notice the struggles around them, and to help where they could. Monica also noticed that Lila was growing in confidence. The little girl began speaking up more at school, sharing her thoughts and ideas, and even standing up for friends who were being treated unfairly. Monica could see the lessons of kindness and empathy taking root in her daughter, shaping her character in ways that would last a lifetime. It was a powerful reminder that acts of generosity were not just about immediate impact. They were about creating a foundation for future growth and compassion. The relationship between Monica, Lila, and James began to deepen in subtle ways. They didn't spend every day together, but when paths crossed, there was a natural warmth and familiarity. Monica would wave when she saw him at the shopping center, and Lila would shyly say hello, her eyes lighting up with recognition and gratitude. James, in turn, always responded with a gentle smile, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had been created through that single act of generosity. Monica reflected often on the lessons she had learned. Life was still challenging, and there were days when bills piled up, or Lila got sick, or she felt exhausted from working long hours. But those moments no longer felt insurmountable. She had discovered that even in the darkest times, hope could shine through. And she had learned that kindness, whether giving money, time, attention, or just a smile, had the power to transform lives in ways she could not have imagined. As weeks turned into months, Monica continued to grow stronger, more resilient, and more hopeful. She had found a community that supported her, a daughter who inspired her, and a man whose simple act of generosity had sparked a change that reached far beyond what any of them could see at first. It was a reminder that life wasn't just about survival. It was about connection, compassion, and the courage to make a difference, even when the world seemed indifferent. Lila often asked questions about James and why he had helped them. "Mom," she said one evening as they were reading a bedtime story, "why did he give us his last money? Didn't he need it too? Monica smiled, brushing Lila's hair from her face. Sometimes, baby, people do the right thing even when it's hard. He knew we needed help and he chose to give. That's what makes him special. Lila nodded, thoughtful. I want to be like him, she whispered. And you can be, Monica said softly. You already are in so many ways. Every time you help someone, every time you share, every time you show kindness, you're being like him. Monica realized that this was perhaps the greatest lesson of all. The power of one act of generosity to inspire countless others. It wasn't just about the $50 James had given. They were symbolic of something much bigger. They represented compassion, courage, and the belief that even the smallest action could ripple outward and touch many lives. That evening, as Monica tucked Lila into bed, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She was grateful for the support they had received, for the lessons they had learned, and for the bond that had formed between them and James. Life would continue to have challenges, but she now knew that hope, kindness, and human connection were powerful forces that could help them face anything. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the shopping center, James continued his work. He still cleaned floors, emptied trash, and performed the duties of his job with quiet diligence. But inside he carried a quiet joy and a sense of fulfillment that went beyond words. He had seen how one small gesture could change lives, how kindness could inspire hope, and how even the simplest actions could create lasting bonds. The story of that single act, the $50 given without expectation, the gratitude of a mother, the joy of a child, was no longer confined to a single moment. It had grown into a ripple of hope, kindness, and inspiration that would continue to flow through their lives and the lives of everyone they touched. Monica and Lila had learned that life's greatest treasures weren't material. They were the moments of connection, the acts of compassion, and the understanding that even in difficult times people could make a difference. And James had learned that giving selflessly, even when it required sacrifice, could create a legacy far beyond what one could imagine. Life had begun to shift in ways Monica had never imagined. The small act of kindness from James, the janitor, had created ripples that were slowly reaching far beyond that one day at the store. Monica had always focused on survival, working long hours, keeping the bills paid, and making sure Lila had what she needed. But now, there was a sense of hope, a feeling that life could be better. It was subtle at first, small changes that made her heart feel lighter and her days a little brighter. One morning, as Monica was leaving the laundry service after a long night shift, she noticed a small crowd gathered near the local newsstand. Curiosity pulled her closer, and she realized that a reporter had written a piece about James and his selfless act of giving his last $50 to a struggling mother and her daughter. Monica felt a jolt of surprise and emotion as she read the article. The story wasn't just about money. It was about humanity, compassion, and the power of one person to make a difference. The article described James as a quiet man who had spent decades serving his community in small, unnoticed ways. It mentioned how he had refused recognition or reward, giving his help without expecting anything in return. Monica felt tears prick at her eyes. She knew him to be humble, but seeing the world acknowledge his kindness made her heart swell with gratitude and admiration. The story quickly began to spread. People in the community, inspired by James's actions, started reaching out to help Monica and Lila. It wasn't charity in the traditional sense. There were no large donations or flashy gestures. Instead, it was neighbors offering vegetables from their gardens, a local family giving a second-hand bike to Lila, and co-workers sharing tips on job opportunities that could provide a little more stability. Each small act built upon the kindness James had shown, creating a network of care around the struggling mother and daughter. Monica felt both humbled and encouraged. She realized that kindness had a way of multiplying. What started as a single act from a stranger could ignite a chain of generosity that no one could have predicted. It made her want to give more, not just to Lila or herself, but to the world around her. Every gesture of help, no matter how small, mattered. She began thinking about how she could contribute, even in little ways, to the community that was now lifting her up. At work, Monica started volunteering for extra responsibilities whenever she could. She helped train new employees, stayed late to organize stock, and offered guidance to anyone struggling with their tasks. Her supervisors noticed her dedication and slowly, she began receiving more recognition. The small increase in income helped her manage expenses more comfortably, but more importantly, it gave her a renewed sense of confidence. She felt capable, valued, and connected to the people around her. Lila also began to shine in ways Monica hadn't expected. The little girl's teachers reported that she had become more attentive in class, more eager to help classmates, and more confident in her abilities. She had always been bright, but now there was a spark of resilience and empathy that seemed to radiate from her. Lila would often come home from school sharing stories of helping a friend, comforting someone who was upset, or simply offering a smile to someone who looked lonely. Monica couldn't help but marvel at how much one act of kindness had inspired not just her, but her daughter as well. One sunny afternoon, Monica received a phone call from the reporter who had written the article about James. She wanted to interview Monica and Lila for a follow-up story, highlighting how James's generosity had positively impacted their lives. Monica felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. She agreed, knowing that the story could encourage others to be kind and help those in need. When the day of the interview arrived, Monica and Lila met the reporter at a small park near their apartment. Lila clutched her mother's hand, shy but proud, while Monica shared their story with quiet honesty. She spoke about the struggles they had faced, the challenges of being a single parent, and the overwhelming feeling of despair that had filled their days before James stepped in. She spoke about the moment he gave them his last $50 and how it had changed everything, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. The reporter listened intently, occasionally nodding and jotting down notes. She asked Lila about the man who had helped them, and the little girl's eyes sparkled as she described him. "He was kind," she said simply. "He gave us money even though he didn't have much, and he smiled at me." Her words were simple, but they carried weight, capturing the essence of generosity in its purest form. After the interview, the story aired on local news channels and circulated widely on social media. Comments poured in from people moved by the tale. Some shared their own experiences of receiving unexpected help, while others expressed a desire to emulate James's actions. The story became a reminder that even the smallest acts of generosity could have far-reaching consequences, inspiring others to act with compassion in their own lives. For Monica, the experience was transformative. She realized that her struggles were not isolated, that there were people willing to help, and that one act of kindness could ignite hope and change lives. She began to feel more connected to her community, more confident in her abilities, and more determined to create a stable and nurturing environment for Lila. James, meanwhile, remained humble despite the attention he received. He continued his work at the shopping center, quietly cleaning floors, emptying trash, and ensuring the place was tidy. The recognition didn't change him. It simply reminded him of the power of a single act to influence others. He often reflected on the day he gave Monica and Lila his last $50, thinking about how such a small gesture could create ripples that reached far beyond what he could see. Monica noticed that her life was no longer just about surviving. It was about thriving. The small assistance she received allowed her to focus on opportunities for growth. She started exploring additional work options, considering part-time classes to improve her skills, and finding ways to make life more enriching for Lila. She also made time for small joys, reading bedtime stories without rushing, taking Lila to the park on weekends, and sharing simple meals without the stress that had once accompanied every bite. Lila, too, was blossoming. She began participating in community events, helping organize small activities for other children, and showing a natural inclination toward empathy and leadership. Monica watched her daughter with pride, realizing that the lessons learned from James's kindness were shaping her into a thoughtful, caring, and responsible young girl. As the months passed, Monica and Lila's bond with James grew in subtle but meaningful ways. They would occasionally see him at the shopping center, and their greetings became warm and familiar. Lila would wave shyly and James would smile, acknowledging the quiet connection that had formed between them. Monica began to understand that relationships built on compassion and respect could be just as transformative as material support. The story of James's generosity had created a ripple effect not only in Monica and Lila's lives but also in the wider community. People began to look for opportunities to help, inspired by his example. Acts of kindness multiplied, neighbors checking in on one another, strangers offering assistance without being asked, and small gestures that reminded everyone that even the simplest actions could make a difference. Monica reflected on all these changes one evening as she tucked Lila into bed. "Do you see, baby?" she asked softly. "One small act of kindness can grow and grow. It can change lives in ways we never imagine." Lila nodded, her eyes wide with understanding. "Like the man at the store," she said. "Yes, exactly," Monica replied. "And now it's our turn to keep the kindness going." Every time we help someone else, we're continuing the story. Monica realized that her life had shifted from merely surviving to being part of something bigger. She had discovered that generosity and compassion were not just values to teach Lila. They were tools to build a better life, to create connections, and to inspire hope. The community that had begun to form around them, however small, was a testament to the power of selfless actions. James, quietly doing his work day after day, had unknowingly become a catalyst for change. His simple decision to help a struggling mother and her daughter had set off a chain of events that brought people together, inspired acts of kindness, and showed that humanity could still shine brightly even in challenging times. For Monica, the lesson was clear. Life was not just about the hardships we face, but about how we respond to them. By embracing compassion, by giving when we can, and by noticing the needs of others, we create opportunities for change that go far beyond ourselves. And for Lila, the lesson was perhaps even more profound. She was learning that generosity, empathy, and courage were qualities that could shape her future and the lives of those around her. As the days went on, Monica and Lila continued to grow, not just in comfort and stability, but in spirit. The simple act of kindness from James had become a foundation upon which they could build a life of hope, gratitude, and compassion. And while the challenges of the world did not disappear, the knowledge that good people existed and that one person could make a difference gave them strength to face whatever came next. Monica often thought about James, wondering if he realized the true impact of his actions. She knew that he had given selflessly, expecting nothing in return, and yet the kindness had returned to them in ways far beyond money. It had returned as hope, opportunity, love, and connection, and she resolved to continue the ripple, to honor the generosity shown to them by helping others whenever she could. Life had taken a turn for the better, yet Monica and Lila never forgot where they had come from. Their small apartment, once a place of stress and worry, now felt warmer, brighter, and filled with hope. The kindness James had shown them months ago had not only eased their financial burden, but had sparked a chain of events that changed how they saw the world and how they lived in it. Every day felt a little lighter, a little brighter, and a little more full of possibilities. Monica's work situation improved gradually. With the help and encouragement from her community, she managed to find a better-paying position at a small local office. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it provided stability and allowed her to plan for the future. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the constant pressure of counting every penny or worrying about which bill would be late. She could even save a little, tucked away in a small jar that she called her Hope Fund. It wasn't much, but it was symbolic of how far they had come. Lila, too, thrived. She continued to excel at school, but now her confidence grew alongside her kindness. She joined a small community club for children, where they learned about helping others, participating in charity events, and creating small projects to support those in need. Lila loved it. She often came home buzzing with ideas for how she could help a friend, a neighbor, or even someone she didn't know. Monica watched her daughter's enthusiasm with pride, realizing that the lessons of generosity and compassion would shape her for life. One sunny afternoon, Monica received a message from the community center asking if she and Lila would like to attend a small,